Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Common Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Fire. Here. Facial.
Here.
Rosendich.
Here.
Bargander.
Here.
Wagner. Here. Whitlow.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Spiros.
Here.
Budke.
Here.
Endler.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Item C, public comment. At this time, the mayor will recognize members of the public who have indicated their desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the mayor, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. Council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Anyone from the public wish to address the council? Seeing no one, we'll go on to item D. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the December 8th, 2020 meeting? Motion by Mr. Fire, second by Mr. Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire.
Yes.
Facial.
Yes.
Rosendich.
Yes.
Bargander.
Yes.
Wagner. Yes. Whitlow.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Spiros.
Yes.
Budke.
Yes.
Endler.
Yes.
Thank you. Item E, any staff updates? Steve, any staff updates?
Unmute.
That looks like a no.
You're on mute.
Yeah, okay. All right, item F, mayor's comments, employee recognition. Daniel Solinsky, Police Department, 35 years. Cindy Gates, the Police Department, 15 years. Joshua Larson with the Police Department, 5 years. Rockley Gross with the Police Department, 15 years. Thank you all very much. That is it for me. Item G, any council comments? Comments from the council? Seeing none, we will go on to item H. Any reports from commissions, boards, or committees? All right, well, seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. And before we seek approval, we'll have to read in some of the minutes. So we'll start off with Board of Public Works. Where is?
Good evening, this is Dan. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. Board of Public Works meeting of December 14th, 2020 was called to order by Chairman Budke, 5:30 p.m. in the council chambers. President Alderman Budke, Fire, Rosendich, Bargander, Fisher, and several staff members. Motion by Bargander, second by Rosendich to recommend approval of the minutes of the November 30th, 2020 board meeting. Roll call vote, all ayes, motion carried. There were no citizen comments. There was a motion by Bargander, second by Fire, to recommend approval of the low bid submitted by Haas Sons Incorporated of Thorpe, Wisconsin for the Manville Lift Station project in the amount of $320,000 and authorize execution of the contract. Roll call vote, all ayes, motion carried. There's a motion by Fisher, second by Fire, to recommend approval of the request for proposals for design engineering services for Lincoln Avenue reconstruction from 5th Street to Adler Road, and authorize staff to solicit proposals. Roll call vote, all ayes, that motion carried. Street Superintendent, Street Superintendent Hawley gave an overview of the winter snow season readiness, including our equipment, use of technology, priority routes, staffing, and other information. This was an information only. Then there was a motion by Rosendich, second by Fire, to adjourn to closed session at 5:55 p.m. pursuant to Wisconsin Chapter 1985, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And that was for the purpose of discussing a possible purchase of land at 8th Street and Holly Avenue. Roll call vote, all ayes, and that motion carried. Present in the closed session were Alderman Budke, Fire, Rosendich, Bargander, Fisher, City Administrator Barg, Parks and Recreation Director Casperson, Public Works Director Connect, and City Engineer Turchi. There was a motion by Rosendich, second by Fire, to reconvene in open session at 6:13 p.m. That motion, roll call vote, all ayes, and that motion carried. There was no action taken in open session regarding that closed session item. And then finally, there was a motion by Bargender, second by Fisher, that the meeting be adjourned at 6:14 p.m. and that motion carried.
Thank you very much. Next is Judiciary and License Committee minutes.
Judiciary and License minutes. Meeting called to order by Chairperson Rose. Present was.
Can you turn that mic on? I don't. Yep.
Okay. Present was Spiros, Paschal, Witzel. Excused none. Also present was Alderperson Wagner and city staff. There were no citizen comments. Motion by Paschal, second by Witzel to approve the minutes of the December 1st, 2020 meeting. Motion carried. Chairman Spiros turned the meeting over to Vice Chair Paschal, and Alderperson Wagner joined the meeting at 5:02 p.m. Motion by Witzel, second by Wagner to approve by unanimous consent the following: beverage operator application for the years 2019 to 2021 of Melanie Herron, Brianna Sawyer, and Jennifer Taylor. Secondhand jewelry dealer application from Christensen Jewelers, 1823 North Central Avenue. Secondhand jewelry dealer application from Workers and Jewelers, 1921 North Central Avenue. Secondhand article dealer application from Altercom Wireless, 911 North Central Avenue. Secondhand article dealer application from What Goes Around Comes Around, 107 West 2nd Street. Taxi cab operator license application from Running Incorporated, doing business as Marshfield Public Transit, 318 West Decker Street, Viroqua, Wisconsin. Auto Savage dealer, scrap metal dealer application from Asylum Scrap Services Incorporated, 2304 South Gavin Avenue. Motion carried. No items were removed from the consent agenda. Motion by Wagner, second by Witzel to approve the beverage operator application for the years 2019 to 2021 of Troy Opsel, with 25 demerit points assessed for the felony conviction of battery, which involved alcohol. Motion carried. Motion by Wagner, second by Witzel to deny the beverage operator application for the years 2019 to 2021 of Michael Yeager, based on the recommendation of his probation officer. Motion carried. There are no future agenda items. Motion by Witzel, second by Wagner to adjourn at 5:16 p.m.
Thank you very much. And now the minutes of Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee.
The Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee minutes of December 15th, 2020. Regular meeting called to order by Chairperson Wagner at 5:30 p.m. in the Common Council chambers. Present Alderpersons Paschal, Witzel, Wagner, Hendler, and Spiros. Also present was city staff. The identified potential conflicts of interest. Chairman Wagner stated he serves on the board of the government agency we contract for the Marshfield Job Center. He will recuse himself during that portion of the agenda. There were no citizen comments. Motion by Paschal, second by Witzel to approve the items on the consent agenda. Minutes of the December 1st, 2020 regular meeting. Report of personnel actions of December 15th, 2020. Bills in the amount of $468,261.46 and payroll in the amount of $994,541.22. Motion carried. No items were removed from the consent agenda. Motion by Witzel, second by Paschal to recommend approval of budget resolution number 7-2020 amended, transferring $20,000 from the Airport Capital Outlay Fund for the purchase of a credit card reader for the Marshfield Municipal Airport. Motion carried. Motion by Paschal, second by Hendler to recommend approval of resolution number 2020-58, writing off certain delinquent ambulance accounts in the amount of $32,000. Motion carried. Motion by Witzel, second by Spiros to recommend approval of resolution 2020-59, approving committed fund balance classifications for continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2020 to be carried over into 2021. Motion carried. Motion by Witzel, second by Spiros to recommend approval of the 2021 insurance policy renewals. Motion carried. Motion by Paschal, second by Hendler to recommend approval to refill a vacant police officer position created by retirement. Motion carried. Motion by Hendler, second by Paschal to recommend approval to refill the vacant administrative associate 2 position in the clerk's office. Motion carried. Chairperson Wagner turned the meeting over to Vice Chair Spiros at 5:49 p.m. Motion by Hendler, second by Paschal to recommend approval of the 2021 contract for Marshfield Job Center. Wagner abstained. Motion carried. Chairperson Wagner resumed chairing the meeting at 5:53 PM. There are no future agenda items. Motion by Hendler, second by Paschal to adjourn the meeting at 5:55 PM.
Thank you. And the final reading is City Planning Commission minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Chairman McManus called the meeting to order at 6 p.m. in the Common Council chambers. Those present were Mayor Bob McManus, John Caprillion, Alderperson Quentin Rosendich, Kathy Banks, and Ken Wood. Absent were Bill Pinker and Steve Okonek. Others present were Emmett Simkowski, Associate Planner, Bryce Hembrook, City Planner, Josh Miller, Development Services Director, and others. There were no citizens' comments. Public hearing was held for a conditional use request by Reed Sazama to allow for an exception to exceed the maximum residential accessory building square footage limit with the total area exceeding 1,200 square feet and the footprint of the first floor area of the home, and to allow an exception to the maximum detached accessory height located at 518 West McGee Street, parcel 33-01797, zoned SR6, single-family residential. Emmett Simkowski presented this item. There was one public comment by Gavin Swarzy. He's located at 116580 Equity Street in Stratford, Wisconsin. He's representing Janet Leaders, which is a neighbor. And his question was whether there was, where the garage was going to lie and how close it would be to the lot line. And he also wanted to know if a survey would be done to make sure setbacks and other codes were met. Simkowski explained that the east setback will be 5 feet, which will be an increase from the current garage setback, and that he believes that a survey was already done. They also have a 12-foot setback from the south property line. Rosendich asked what the current setback is now. It is the current garage at a 3-foot setback, and they are increasing the setback from the east property line to 5 feet. Wood moved and Banks seconded the motion to approve the conditional use request by Reed Sazama to allow for an exception to exceed the maximum residential accessory building square footage limit with the total area exceeding 1,200 square feet and the footprint of the first floor area of the home, and to allow an exception to the maximum detached accessory building height located at 518 West McGee Street, parcel 33-01797, zoned SR6, single-family residential with the following condition. The property is permitted to have a total of 1,512 square feet of accessory space, and the garage is to have a maximum height of 22 feet. Minor site changes may be approved administratively as long as the changes do not result in the development being non-compliant with this conditional use permit and or other code requirements. A roll call vote, all ayes, motion carried. Public hearing went for a rezoning request by Tim Vreeland to rezone a portion of the property located at 800 North Maple Avenue, parcel 33-02037 from SR4 single family residential to UMU urban mixed use. Bryce Hembrook presented this item. There was no public comments. Quentin Rosendich moved and Banks seconded the motion to approve the rezoning request based on the proposal's consistency with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and staff recommended that the Plan Commission located at 800 North Maple Avenue, parcel 33-02037 from SR4 single family residential to UMU urban mixed use, with a provision that if a conditional use permit for an off-site parking lot with any necessary exceptions to make the property conforming is not approved by March 1st, 2021, the zoning would be repealed and reverted back to the SR4 single family residential zoning district, and ask that you direct staff to prepare an ordinance for common council consideration. A roll call vote, all ayes, motion carried. There's a public hearing for a municipal code amendment by the city of Marshfield to amend section 1865, paragraph 8, a residential accessory building, and section 1865, paragraph 9, non-residential accessory building, to increase the minimum square footage limit, change the number of detached accessory structures allowed, and further clarify what types of structures are considered to be residential and non-residential accessory buildings. References to the accessory structural land use sections will also be updated in sections 18-72, yard setback adjustments, and section 1873, intrusions to the required yards. Public comment, none. Discussion, Caprillion asked staff to explain the deed restriction requirement. Hembrook explained that someone would build an accessory structure on an abutting lot, and then they would sell the home, which would create a nonconformity. The agreement would be filed with the county to ensure that they cannot sell the property separately in the future. Banks moved and Wood seconded the motion to approve the municipal code amendment request by the city of Marshfield to amend chapter 18, general zoning ordinance, section 1865, paragraph 8, section 1865, paragraph 9, section 1872, and section 1873, and to direct staff to prepare an ordinance for common council consideration. Roll call vote, all ayes, motion carried. Items for future agendas, staff said they would be bringing back a code amendment to address moving permits of chapter 15 code amendment is approved this evening. There were no staff updates. With no further business to discuss, Wood moved and Rosenich seconded to adjourn the meeting at 6:21 p.m.
Thank you very much. With that, is there a motion to receive and place on file, approving all recommended actions in the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Butke, a second by Mr. Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Rosendich,
Yes.
Bargander,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yeah.
Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Spiros,
yes,
Budke,
Yes.
Pendler.
Yes.
Thank you. Item K, request to approve budget resolution number 07-2020 amended, transferring $20,000 from the Airport Capital Outlay Fund for purchase of a credit card reader, presented by Ron Alman, Finance Director.
Thank you, Bob. Council members, in your packet, you'll see an amended budget resolution. A few weeks ago, Jeff Geyer from the airport presented the resolution. It had the incorrect budget account number. The correct budgetary account number being adjusted is the 415-43000-33-33000. The source and the use of the funds and all other facts are the same. We just wanted the budget resolution to have the correct number.
Thank you very much. With that, is there a motion to approve the amended budget resolution number 07-2020? Motion by Mr. Fire. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Rosendich. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote, please.
Fire,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Rosendich,
Yes.
Bargander,
Yes.
Wagner, Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Spiros,
yes,
Budke,
Yes.
Pendler.
Yes.
Thank you. Item L, second.
Thank you.
That motion carries. Item L, second reading of ordinance number 1446 to repeal, replace Chapter 15 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, Building Code, presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Even though this is the second reading, this is the third time we're kind of presenting this to the council, just because we wanted to have extra time because there's only 1 week in between the first and second reading. Really, this was a major overhaul to the Chapter 15 Building Code, which has not had a major update since 1982. This is severely needed because we're going on 40 years without with the same code, and a lot of things have changed in state law or state law and other code requirements in the state. This new code would apply to both residential and commercial buildings. We have links to links to all inspections so people can see what's expected. Clearly define the expectations and exceptions for pre-1980s construction. We include sections for temporary structures, uses, manufactured homes and accessory buildings and decks. Also have a provision for a change of use because that's really critical. And when existing properties aren't being added to, they're just remodeling and changing the overall use. And then the big one is we're adding an International Property Maintenance Code from 2015 and looking at enforcement, standardized definitions, exterior property areas, exterior structures, interior structures, and other things that would be basically minimum standards that would have to be required to be met. And so really there's not any changes since the first reading, but I did want to address a couple of things from the last meeting if I could. I know there was a question about whether this was an international building code, and I stated that there's in 50 states and other municipalities. It's in dozens of other countries, so it's a global code. It's not in all the countries, obviously, but I think I read 28 countries or more have this code that they can apply to. Also want to address the comment on the inspections that we've been doing, or inspectors working. Going back to May and April, we had a lockdown on the pandemic. We were concerned about, whether we continue to have inspections or continue to be able to offer permits. And our inspectors were probably, one of the few. They weren't considered essential personnel or emergency services personnel, but they never wavered. They never stopped doing inspections. They never stopped taking permits. This was all an effort to see, I think, one of our busiest springs ever, in an effort to keep things going and projects going. So I really wanted to kind of point that out, that they never asked to telework or stay home. They did their job, did a good job with that. our numbers of permits continue to increase. We've had the most number of permits in 2020 that we've had since 2010. So we are getting people to take out permits. Now, they're not as high value as some of the other ones, but that means that they're the small, weekend warriors, they're getting more and more permits. Are we catching every single one of them? Probably not, but we're trying to do a better job. When we see a truck at a home and if we don't, there's not a permit, we'll stop and ask them to get a permit. And we, if permits are not taken care of and we're having issues with that, we do a double fee for those. So we are addressing those things. And we do, generally we operate on a complaint basis, but if there's a life, health, or safety issue and we see it, notice it, we do address it, make sure that that's getting taken care of. So I wanted to make sure that, we're not just ignoring things, but, we do generally operate on a complaint basis though, because to do otherwise or to do proactive enforcement just isn't an efficient or effective use of our time. And I'd be happy to come back. We'd need more staff and more equipment to do that with a vehicle or something, but be happy to present or come back with a cost estimate on that. But given obviously the finances of the city, but also I just don't think that's the most proactive or most effective use of our time to do that. But if there are issues and we hear about them or know about them, we'll take care of them. And I would ask that both aldermen and the public, if they see issues, we did a presentation, or Steve did a presentation about 6 months ago on code enforcement. And shortly after that, I sent a link to a website that had all of the different general common complaints that we had in the community and who to contact for those complaints. We also have a geo-reporting system, an online complaint system. We encourage people to use those tools because with those, we can address those concerns and we can do a more effective job. We can log in those complaints. So I want to make sure that we're getting that information out there. I think as we get this code done, I do want to come back to the council and explain a little more detail some of the things that we have worked on, some of the numbers. I know Alderman Bucky had asked for a report on some things. I think we can do a better job of reporting that to the council so you guys know some of the work we're doing. And that's my error. I should do a better job of updating the council on some of those things. So we can certainly improve on that. So we're looking to rebrand the geo-reporting system and update our logging of inspection reports through an improved complaint filing process on the website. And as we've been talking about this new evolved permit software that'll help with tracking some of these things. A lot of our complaints are addressed verbally, so we can handle those quickly, but some are longer term because they're bigger problems, they're more costly, and they take a while to resolve. Sometimes you just have to have patience, but we will eventually get to a resolution. So the other thing that we've been talking about this week, we're updating chapter 15 right now, going through some of the other sections of code, other chapters, chapter 10 and 11, our public peace and good order and our public nuisance sections. Other departments take care of some of these other issues, and we know we have to update some of those as well. So because we want to have some consistency with our new property maintenance code and how we address some of these other nuisances. So just wanted to mention that. I guess that's about it, unless Pat, if I'm missing something. So thank you for your time on that.
All right, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 1446? Motion by Mr. Wagner, second by Mr. Fisher. Any discussion? Mr. Bucky.
Yeah, yesterday, and Mr. Bargander can jump in. We spent 2 hours, only 2 hours, 32 junk cars throughout the city, buildings that have fallen down. We were out at one place in an alley, and a resident came out and we asked, well, how long's that car been there? And actually it's infringing on the alley. And we told the gentleman that we're trying to fix that. And he said, good luck. So the word's out there, folks, that we're not doing it. Now that only took us 2 hours. And I know I've been around for a long time. I was involved with the inspection for plumbing years ago, and I know how it works. Generally speaking, either somebody puts in a complaint and the inspector looks at it and the secretary writes the orders. I doubt if it's much different now. I don't think there's an excuse, guys, for this. I really don't. Mr. Bargander, if you want to add.
Mr. Bargender.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Tom and I made it a point to spend an afternoon just driving around, and we did not cover the whole city, obviously. We just kind of went to in areas that we kind of knew that there was problems going on. 32 junk vehicles, yes, that's absolutely. And not just junk vehicles that are sunk into the ground, junk vehicles that trees have grown around. We have documentation, we have addresses, everything will be turned over to the inspectors and the appropriate departments. Buildings, homes that have holes in their roofs, garages that are absolutely collapsed to the ground, garages that I think a few inches of snow probably are going to collapse those garages. Homes, roofs, obviously they're leaking. It was really shocking when you really take a real close look and make a point of it. So this is something that I've been involved with Josh. Even before I was on council, we talked about some of these things. I think it really is time to address some of these situations. Not only the property, but just general junk, tires, appliances, mattresses we found. Most of it's down in alleys. I'll admit, people are good at hiding things. They back their cars up to the garage so you couldn't see the expiration on the license plates. Just all sorts of weird things we found. It was quite the experience. So, moving forward, hopefully the change in this ordinance gives us some teeth that we can do some more enforcement. It's good for the whole community to have these places cleaned up. We don't want slums here in the city of Marshfield. That's our point of doing this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hindler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Both Mr. Butke and Mr. Bargender hit the nail right on the head. And I'm not I've been involved in looking at facilities in the city, but I also know that this particular ordinance provision will give us or give you the opportunity to satisfy some of these requests. So it's all on you, Josh. Let's get the job done.
Any other, please, Josh.
Thank you, Mayor. No, and I appreciate the comments. I think the couple things though, the junk vehicles and the junk in the yards and stuff, that's generally ordinance control and PD. So, I mean, we're not touching that provision in the code. That is still part of the public nuisance thing. So those are the more obvious ones. The weeds, the junk, things like that. People see that and they think, oh, that's building inspections. And that generally that's the ordinance control. We work with them and but I would encourage you to work with the PD or report those issues. Building issues, dilapidated buildings, let us know. I mean, you can either call our, 486-2016, or you can email or submit a complaint or whatever, and we'll certainly look at those. And if there's something we can do, our current code limited us to be quite honest in some of the things that we could address. But I think there's still going to be some limitations. This is not a silver bullet that will fix everything. We could be back here in 3 or 4 months making changes to this code because you see how things are going and see how things are implemented. Sometimes things don't work out how you envision. So just want to, again, encourage you, if you see those things, let us know. We're not driving through with blinders on, but we have, inspections to attend to, jobs to do, and things like that. And it's not always the easiest thing to go back, and nor is there always enough time in the day to do that. So like I said, I encourage you guys to report those things. If you have a list of addresses for, especially the dilapidated garages, you're worried that snow is going to take one down. Yeah, those are life and safety issues that we need to address if we can. I don't know, Steve, if you have anything else.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things. I certainly definitely think you had an eye-opening experience by going out and seeing that in just 2 hours. And I'm not doubting the fact that there's some buildings that are dilapidated or some fences that maybe are falling down or some vehicles that are not in great shape. I will caution you on the junk cars because I've done code enforcement before, and something you might call a junk car might not legally qualify as a junk car. It's rusted out, all this kind of stuff, but it's got 4 wheels, it looks operable, it's got license plates, but I don't want to get into that. the biggest issue here really is this notion of proactive enforcement. And I know what you're saying. I can hear what you said last meeting, Tom, that if a building inspector or an engineering staff person is driving from here to Menards, to meet with somebody or to look at a project, why don't they on the way? Why don't they note down what they're seeing as far as violations? That's really, I mean, when you think about what they're doing, that's easier said than done. I mean, they're meeting somebody there at 10 o'clock and they're doing an inspection and they're looking at a site. It's very unlikely that they're going to write down information about the homes they're seeing, right, wrong, or otherwise. What you're talking about is really good. Is proactive code enforcement. I think some cities have probably done it, but it requires staff. It requires resources. It really does. I mean, in a city of 20,000, do I know that there's places like that all over town? Yeah. Do I like them? No. I'd love to see them stamped out. I'd love to see them cleaned up. Neighborhoods are either usually snowballing in the right direction or they're snowballing in the wrong direction. And when a neighborhood starts snowballing in the wrong direction, it's devastating to the entire community. But it's about time and resources. And I know the ordinance officers, we talked about some of the stuff that they look at. They've also got tons of animal complaints and all sorts of other police assists they're doing every day. So being able to go out and spend time in a neighborhood without anything else going on and drive around is challenging. And secondly, I'll caution one more thing. I think if you're going to do that, you need to make a commitment to proactive code enforcement citywide. You don't want to be seeing that Josh and other people had somebody on the east side of town over by Becker and wherever, because we thought that there's more problems there, but we weren't driving around other neighborhoods. At that point, somebody's going to say, no, wait a minute, are you doing this selectively or are you doing this across the community looking for these things? So just something to think about. I hear your frustration. I get it. I don't like those kind of nuisance problems and those kind of code enforcement violations any more than you do, but it is about time and resources. We have not added really any FTEs almost since I got here. We had 192 FTEs then. We're up around 196 FTEs now, and that includes people we've added in the fire department recently. So it's not like there's more bodies to do the work. You have to find some way who's going to have the time to do the things you're talking about, even as I admit that they're very worthwhile.
Thank you. Mrs. Spiros.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share my experience in working with Josh and his group. I wanted to let them know that, let the people know that I've called Josh probably on 3 or 4 occasions regarding problem properties that people in my district have complained of. And I just want to give a shout out to Josh and his group because they've been very responsive with me. And they've been very responsive back to generally the person who's made the complaint about the dilapidated property or what have you. So I just wanted to put a word out that my interactions with Josh and his department have been very good, and he has had very good follow-up.
Steve.
Yeah, I want to give you a shout out, Rebecca, because I've gotten many emails that either you've written to me or you've copied me on that have given engineering, building inspections, and other staff some information that's allowed us to follow up and hopefully take care of some of those things. So, I mean, that's really very helpful. I appreciate that.
All right, anything further? Seeing no further discussion, please roll call vote.
Fire,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Rosendich,
Yes.
Bargander,
Yes.
Wagner, Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Spiros,
Yes.
Budke,
Yes.
Kendler.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. Item M, first reading of ordinance number 1447 to rezone a portion of the property located at 800 North Maple Avenue, parcel 33-02037 from SR4 single family residential to UMU urban mixed use, presented by Bryce Humbrook, city planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So city staff received a request to approve a certified survey map, also known as a CSM, for the property at 800 North Maple Avenue. The CSM was proposing to split the lot into essentially 2 properties and have an outlot on the west side of the property. The property currently consists of a single family residence, which is located on the east side of the property, and a parking lot on the west side of the property that serves customers and workers for Dairy Queen. So the outlot would be the parking lot. So there is a potential buyer for the site where the single family residence is located, and they wish to have the parking lot separated. Thus, that's why they requested splitting up the lots. The certified survey map could not be approved as presented until a rezoning and a conditional use permit were approved, because the parking lot would now be considered to be an off-site parking land use, which would require both of those approvals. So staff discussed the matter with the city attorney, and he suggested that we recommend, or if we do recommend approving, we should incorporate a provision in the ordinance to set a deadline for obtaining a conditional use permit. To make the site conforming. If that approval is not obtained by the deadline, the zoning will revert back to SR4 single family residential zoning district. So we have included that provision in the ordinance, which is located in the packet. We did review this at Plan Commission earlier tonight. Staff recommended to approve the rezoning from SR4 to UMU with the provision requiring the CUP by March 1st, 2021. Plan Commission recommended approval. There were no public comments. This is the first reading, and the second reading will be on January 12th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no action, but does anybody have any questions for Bryce regarding this request? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Bryce. Item N, review progress on the 2019 to 2021 strategic plan and discuss plans to update this plan through 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it was 2 years ago in December of 2018 that this body approved a new 3-year strategic plan. It's the first strategic plan that we had, that I was here for, and it was a real big step, I think. I applaud the council on that, and we're gonna kind of go through that tonight. We're wrapping up year 2. So 2 years down, 1 year to go. That means 2 things. 1, I want to give you an update of what we've accomplished. And 2, I want to talk about where you want to take this in the future and look at some ideas as we go into year 3, because year 3 is going to go fast and we're going to be saying, well, okay, what's next? The 5 key strategic areas that we came up with that we want to really hammer on are quality economic and community development, management of the city's financial resources, investment in human resources, communication with the city's stakeholders, and improving the city's infrastructure. One of the things that gets talked about a lot about is obviously streets here in our community that people want to see upgraded. So let's see how we've done so far. In economic and community development, one of the strategies was to facilitate, or I should say action items, to facilitate consistent, responsible growth. Well, you see the list here. I may not cover every item as I walk through this, but Josh and working with his department, an economic development survey has been completed. They've worked on a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with the key stakeholders, created a draft strategic plan, and been directed now to work with Mackey and Marshfield Utilities early this coming year on some of those items. Budgeted for economic development action plan in 2021. This has been postponed before for different reasons, but ready to move forward on that initiative. Comp plan update was approved in 2019. The implementation team has met periodically since that time to review and discuss priorities. They've been hampered by COVID like everybody else a little bit. The building code repeal and replace. The second reading of the ordinance was approved tonight. I did this in advance, expecting and hoping that it would be. And zoning code changes are coming in early 2021. Josh has been working with the city attorney's office on the language to make sure it all is legal, and look for that to be coming up here soon to the council. When we talked about software, there's a evolved permit software that's going to really help with the inspections end of things. And they'll be getting that live here in January of 2021. We've talked a lot about the financial software, but this is an important piece as well. The sewer service area plan was approved and sent to the DNR for review. That's part of growing and developing the community. And we've been working to try and secure additional land for industrial use, along with plans to create a new TIF district in early 2021. Next objective is to identify ideas for quality, attractive housing. The housing study update was completed and presented to various groups, including the council, Plan Commission, Mackey, and others. We had a housing incentive program that was adopted. Great job by Josh and Dan Connect in particular in pulling this together, working it through the EDB and the council as well. We had a project identified in early 2020, but we had to hit the hold button. There was a question about conflict of interest, but that's still being discussed, that site for a possible project. And a mixed-use TIF district is being discussed as well, possibility. And we signed a contract with Juneau County for administration related to the housing rehab program for home fix-up. Ensure the sustainability of downtown Marshfield. Staff sits on 2 Main Street subcommittees to help work on implementing the downtown master plan, which is critical to our downtown. Prepared zoning code rewrite, and including changes designed to benefit the downtown area where possible. Work with those folks, Kaylee Gomez and the board, to try and see what their needs are. And work with the Wenzel Family Plaza Committee in Main Street on future programming opportunities over there at that new facility. And then enhance quality of life facilities and services. Josh and his department were involved in assisting with fundraising, design, construction management, agreements for the new aquatic center, obviously working with Justin Casperson in the Park and Recreation Department. Assisted with the Cougar exhibit, Welcome Center project completed in 2019. And Justin attended a sports tourism workshop, and that's kind of led to a sort of a push in part for sports tourism. And now the EDB has a $10,000 line item in his 2021 budget to help fund a sports tourism strategic plan. We've made a lot in this community out of our ball fields and other amenities that bring people to town for different types of tournaments and those kind of things. We want to keep playing off that. So kudos to Justin as well as to Josh. Next is manage the city's financial resources. One item is to adopt a comprehensive 5-year financial plan. We did that in February of 2020, and good job by this body by embracing it. We'll continue to update it annually. It changes with time. We've had some things happen this year. We thought we were going to get a greater increase in assessed value than we did. And other things change. You need to adapt that plan every year to help us have a blueprint of where we're going financially. Update the debt management policy. Ron has drafted changes. They'll soon be brought to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee and to the Council ultimately for review and approval in the first quarter of 2021. And funding for non-city agencies. The Council adopted a policy 2 years ago at the same time they embraced this plan that laid down the guidelines for when we would provide money to some of these groups for the budget process. We typically funded the same groups year after year, but at least we specified what the expectations were, how it should be for something that really does tie the city services, hopefully, and some things that benefit the whole community. So a new policy has been put in place, and in 2020, we put the request under the council's budget. You probably noted that this last year. Number 3, as far as the 5 pillars, as I call them, investment in the city's human resources. One was to fully implement the new compensation plan that we adopted in 2018 with the help of McGrath, a consultant out of Northern Illinois. The compensation plan changes were implemented in 2019. I have down that they're no longer valid due to the pay scale adjustments having been put on hold for 2020 and 2021. Understand the fiscal constraints that we're facing, but ultimately we need to revisit that because if we don't make strides, we're going to find ourselves quickly in that same boat that we were in 2018, which is well below comparables for the pay scales. Implemented the second final year of the mid-year bump. We had people who've been here more than 10 years and they'd kind of languished behind where they were supposed to be. So we had 2 years of giving them a mid-year bump to try and get them a little closer to where they should be in their careers. Performance evaluations in the second quarter of each year and step adjustments are based on those reviews being successful. And then we wrote off the idea of a mid-year bump for 5-year plus people in 2021. Looking at some of the information, we sort of felt maybe that we didn't need to make that correction as much as we needed to make the corrections the previous 2 years for the longer term staff. Develop an employee appreciation recognition program. I've got to give a lot of shout out here to Jen Rakew, Deb Hall, all the members of that team. They've really worked hard to come up with some good ideas to recognize our staff. Some of them cost money, some of them actually don't. But we had many successes in 2019. A staff picnic that was held out there. I think some of you were actually there. It's not just for staff, but a city picnic in July 2019. An all-employee meeting in November 2019 that the mayor did a great job at. He was recognizing the employees who came forward to get their recognition awards for years of service. 2020 was a bit challenging due to COVID-19. Surprise. It made it harder for the team to do some of these activities, but they still found ways to show gratitude and appreciation of our staff, which is really important. We have some amazing, dedicated, hardworking people here. And it's good to be able to show them thanks in various ways. And the Years of Service program created in 2019 has been continued as well. Also to align benefits. That's one of our ideas to have, so no matter what department you work in, you have the same benefits. We had 6 unions back in 2010, so everybody had kind of disparate levels of benefits. So in 2020, We aligned the disability benefits for non-represented staff. We're aligning the dental benefits in 2021, and then we'll be taking a look at the PEP, those health benefits in that year to see what we can come up with. And updated benefits to be competitive. The biggest one is vacation that we updated in 2019. And it was designed to kind of better categorize different areas of vacation, allow staff to use them in 1 hour increments instead of having to take a half day, and allow a 40-hour rollover. You know, people at the end of the year are scrambling, trying to use vacation. Sometimes things come up where you can't. That allowed people to carry over 40 hours into the next year. Increased communication with stakeholders. Tom Laux, obviously our new communication director at the heart of this, doing a great job. Develop a comprehensive communication plan. You approved it back in October. And he's going to be providing regular reports to the communications committee as we go forward as to whether the plan is effective. Just because you adopt a plan on how you're going to reach the public through various platforms doesn't do it. You got to look back and say, okay, are we measuring it? Are we really reaching people through social media, through website, through other ways? If not, how can we modify it so that we're getting to the people so they know the information? And council approved the plan, as I said, in the fourth quarter of 2020. Going forward, they'll be reviewing the plan expectations in the first quarter of 2021 to make sure we're updating the plan as necessary. It's available now to be used, and they've had a great increase in social media presence in recent months and in the last couple of years, actually. We want to keep that going. And then he will continue to provide reports to the communications committee throughout, he has throughout 2020, he will through 2021. That group meets monthly, and their charge is to see how we're doing. The goal, again, we want to reach the public, to inform, educate, and connect with them. And then finally, measurably improve the city's infrastructure. Big one with a lot of our citizens, and always hard with limited resources. One of the goals was to improve the average street condition. In 2019, we did 3 miles of roadway with about $1.9 million, just under $2 million. In 2020, with Dan's effort and Tom Turchi and others, a 3-year plan has been approved for 2020 through 2022 to do 11 miles of streets in about $6 million of cost. That sounds like a lot, but as Dan would tell you, in the world of street costs, I mean, it's anything less than $2 million is really not keeping up with inflation and the cost of doing these repairs and improvements. In 2019, as I said, we proposed 1.982 million, and then 10.7 million over 5 years in overall street work. Had to cut that back to about 10 million, and that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't keep up with inflation. The adopted 2021 budget includes $2.08 million, and that includes some design engineering for future projects. So in 2021, you want to be planning and doing the design work for a 2022 project, which is the case actually with some projects. That's what we talked about with East 17th Street by the fairgrounds. And then still need to develop a mechanism for reporting the plans in progress. Another goal is to construct 1,000 linear feet of new street per year. The housing incentive program that I mentioned before with Dan and Josh leading the charge was adopted. We haven't done a project yet. As I said before, we had 2 projects out there, and we selected one, and then there was a conflict of interest, so that didn't happen. But we still want to make use of this program. Again, the deal is that developers have a hard time fronting the cost of those infrastructure improvements. So if we can participate in that, we can help spur on a new subdivision or growth in an existing subdivision. $500,000 was proposed in the 2020 budget. The proposed CIP included one additional year in 2022 of $500,000. There's no new funds for infrastructure in 2021 budget, but we do have about $500,000 left from a proposed project that, as I said, did not move forward. Indicates in the next bullet point how we had received 2 project applications in the fall of 2019, but only one moved forward due to funding limitations, and as I said, that one hasn't come to fruition. No new streets are proposed in the adopted 2021-2025 CIP, but we do have a possibility of creating a new TIF district, and that would be a funding availability for new streets in that development area. And then finally, establish priorities for public facilities. We've talked a lot about this. The police station space needs study was done in 2019, presented to the council. Council at that time looked at a lot of alternatives and showed most support, I think, for remodeling and expanding on site rather than moving the police station to another site. No timeline was established. Obviously, we're talking about millions of dollars, and there's nothing for this project in the 2021 to 2025 CIP. Then we had funds budgeted for a street division space needs study in 19, and in 20 we completed it. It was presented to the council this year. No decisions were made, but again, council gave its viewpoint, I think, pretty clearly. They showed interest in considering moving to a new site when that time comes, rather than trying to expand in that footprint or beyond the footprint, actually, in the northwest part of downtown. No significant facility improvements are included in the CIP due to fiscal constraints, and I think we've talked about this. We can talk about who goes first, the police station or the street building, but we're talking about very expensive improvements. You've heard a lot from Ron Ullman, and from me for that matter, about our financial constraints right now, about our borrowing, and trying to get in that line. So the timeline for police or street division improvements is not imminent. I'm not going to define what that means right now, but obviously we're putting our house in order. I commend the council a million times over for what you did during the budget process. That's a huge help toward getting us to the place we need to be financially. But projects of, many millions of dollars may not be on the immediate horizon. So in summary, solid progress was made in 2019 on many of these goals. Not quite as much in 2020. COVID-19 intervened and really challenged us in a number of ways. But we did have some accomplishments, as you saw, in 2020. As we move into the last year of the plan, though, we need to decide where we would like to take strategic planning going forward. And I'll get to that in a second. But we don't want to go through the year 3 and then look at each other a year from now and say, okay, now what? We'd lose the momentum that we've been gaining. So staff's recommendation is as follows. We would propose that staff members update or modify action items shown in that plan. And I've already gotten some recommendations from several of the department heads who have items in that plan saying, look, let's modify the 2021 goal, maybe dial it back a little bit, maybe kind of revise it a little bit to current conditions. So I would propose that even with 2021, we come back to you looking at 2021 and maybe kind of revise some of them, the goals to make them what we think that makes more sense right now. Second is to get council to suggest goals and strategies for the new plan. I've laid out what we talked about 2 years ago. Some of you weren't sitting here 2 years ago. So you might look at this and say, Steve, these 5 pillars of yours with economic development and infrastructure and, financial management, maybe you have some other things that you believe we ought to be looking at. Maybe even within those strategies, you have other key action items that you want to see us working on. We need to know that. We need to be looking at including the input that you have of where the city needs to go. You are the ones elected by the citizens. Then I would suggest staff take the council's input and the other needs that we see as staff leaders and prepare a draft plan for your consideration later in the year, possibly maybe sometime in the summer, with a goal to review and approve a plan with any desired changes made by this body during the fall of 2021. That plan would be another 3-year plan, giving us guidance and direction, a blueprint for 2022 to 2024. So I appreciate your patience. I know this was not a short presentation, but we talk so much in this room about ordinances, about resolutions, about problems, about all the things you guys have to deal with every time you meet. We don't get to spend enough time on what I always call the 30,000 foot level. And here on December 15th, there's no better time to start again looking at the 30,000 foot level for what you want the city to be and what, as staff leaders, we see as the real needs in this community. So with that, I turn it over back to you, Mayor, for any questions, discussion, any thoughts at this point.
Any questions or input from the council? Let's see, where do we got? Pete, Rebecca, Nick, Mr. Fisher.
I guess I just have one question for Steve. This is great. I support always looking at our strategic plan. But what are the actual next steps that you want to actually take? I saw in the last thing that you want council to give input as well. How do you see that transpiring? How is this process next year?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, looking at that recommendation, I would suspect that in the next month or so, staff should be able to come back to this body with some ideas, looking at the plan again for possible changes in the remaining goals. Some of them maybe weren't achievable when we set them forth, and we realized that for various reasons, lack of financial resources or whatever. Others just need to be tweaked a little bit, so I would suspect we do that in the next 30 to 45 days. And then we schedule a time with this body to talk about, I'll call it dreaming. That sounds a little lofty, but what are the things, this gives you a month and a half or so to think about it. What are the things you want to see us working on? What are the areas you think we're deficient? We talked tonight about code enforcement. Maybe there's something that suggests, putting that into the mix in terms of resources and I don't know, but this is your time to really weigh in my opinion, on why you were elected. What kind of city do we want to work toward being in the coming years? And then after that, we'll come back to staff level sometime as we go in, through the spring, Adam. And I would suggest the staff meets like we did 3 years ago and has some roundtable discussions about your input and the needs that we're seeing and starts putting together a draft to bring to you. Like I said, maybe sometime later in the summer with discussions into the fall. I will say one more thing too. I mean, I think it's important to have this dialogue more often than we do about the strategic plan. And I've said this to the staff leaders. From now on, I want us to bring forward, when we bring forward recommendations, I want us to reference this. If we don't reference this, it's not very helpful. But like in the budget, we ought to be referencing sometimes when we talk about something. Well, remember, we embraced this idea of how we're going to try and fund economic development and growth. So if you're not willing to look at expenditure of money for acquiring new industrial land, how do we do these objectives? And kind of call all of us collectively back to making the main thing that we've agreed to do. It doesn't always mean we can accomplish it. Some of the ideas might be out of financial reality, but at least it brings us back to what we've decided is most important.
If I may, Mr. Fisher. I appreciate all that, Steve, and I agree with you. I think I really like strategic plans. I like talking about vision, but one of the things that I think happens a lot of times is you create something and then it collects dust because you're not really constantly evaluating it. I will also say, I think 3 years, maybe even bringing it down to 18, 24 months, even is something to consider because a lot can change in a 3-year time. I mean, 3 years ago or 2 years ago this time, who thought we were going through a pandemic? So life can change very drastically and you have to adjust. And I think, so I just feel like there needs to be a lot of conversations. I agree with you. I mean, in my short time on this council, I think this is only the second or third time we've actually talked. Right? And I don't mean that in any negatives, but it's not something we talk a lot about. And yet, if we really want to think about the future of Marshfield for generations to come, it's probably something we need to discuss more. The other thing I'd like to share is my opinion. I think we need to get more insight from our boards, committees, and commissions, and get their feedback on what they believe Marshfield needs to be. A representative of Utility Commission is here, Library Board, Fire and Police Commission. I mean, there's a lot, Fair Board. There's a lot of different groups out there. Have we really taken the time to discuss with them from their unique perspective about our own vision, and does it align with what they're doing? Because we're all in this together, and if they're doing something completely different than what we're doing, it's really counterproductive. So I would only add that I really think we need to somehow bring them into the equation. Thank you.
Another really good point. Let me add one more thing I didn't say during my presentation too. I sometimes fall into, and I probably said this at meetings with you folks before, the buffet mentality, which is that and I go to buffet, like probably a lot of you go to buffet. People aren't going to buffets as much right now with COVID, but you walk through the line and you just pile it on. Oh, roast beef, ham. Oh, there's some more. Oh, there's some more. And I get back to my booth and I can't eat it all. And I realize right away I can't eat it all. I think one of the things I've talked about with our staff leaders is maybe some of these need to be trimmed back a little bit, but really a deep commitment to each one. I mean, if you look at what Josh had on his plate, he had, I don't know, probably a total of 15 or more action items under these categories. Well, when you're just doing the regular stuff that his department has to do with all the things that come at them with development plans and planning, plan commission items and all that, that's a lot of items. maybe we need to scale that back a little bit, but make sure that there's a deep commitment among this body and staff leaders to try and accomplish those and make a huge dent in those. I'd rather make a huge dent in fewer items than to make a lesser dent in a wide array of items. So these are all, Adam, I appreciate your comments. Those are all good suggestions too.
Further, any other questions from the council? All right, seeing none, thank you, Steve. Item O, adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes, chapter 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved in, update on employment law issues involving the police department. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Motion by Mr. Bargender, second by Mr. Butke. Roll call vote, please.
Fire,
Yes.
Paschal,
Yes.
Rosendich,
Yes.
Bargander,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Witzel,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Spiros, Butke,
Yes.
Handler.
Yes.
Thank you. We are in closed session.